Hello and welcome everyone. Today I want to talk about my currency strategy that I used for the last 2 weeks, namely Expedition Harvest Packsize. This strategy utilizes growing hordes with 4 gilded scarabs and Fortune favors the brave, Eater of Worlds influence, and the following 4 compasses: a small beyond compass, Lifeforce Duplication with either blue or purple plants, Yoon, and 100% increased Immortal Syndicate Intelligence, with our map of choice being Jungle Valley, so we don't have to boss rush to eliminate boss-related Eldritch Altars. And the basic idea is to invest heavily into Harvest Expedition on the Atlas tree. I'm going to, of course, leave the link to this tree in the comments below. And we do that to get a high chance to encounter both mechanics, which should be roughly 80% if you factor in Fortune favors the brave. And you then support those mechanics with Eater of Worlds altars and the Beyond mechanic to obtain tainted currency. In addition to that, we also want to do Immortal Syndicate, which is unrelated to the pack size focus of this strategy, but instead is great in general, as long as you have at least one compass and some Atlas passives to spare. So for the Eater of Worlds altars, in terms of drops, you want to focus on valuable currency. For me, that's Orbs of Scouring, so I don't have to buy them. Regals, Greater and Grand Icons, and of course Divine Orbs if you can find them. Scarabs, polished or gilded. And for divination card drops, we're looking for the ones that give us basic currency and leveled gems. The others can be disregarded. In terms of duplication, basic currency and map duplication is pretty good. Divine and Scarab duplication is only relevant if you have enabled drops from Eldritch monsters. And if we can't find any of those, we can of course always put an increased quantity and rarity, which will then scale the loot of everything else in this map. For Expedition, we want to lock in runic monster markers and useful remnants. And for the remnants, you're looking for logbook quantity, stack decks on runic monsters, pack size, item quantity from monsters, and quantity of artifacts from monsters, at least for Tujin and Danik. The other remnants are not that important, with one notable exception, and that is the one that gives runic monsters a chance to drop corrupted items, because then the logbooks that might be dropping from the runic monsters are corrupted as well, which you don't want because you want to roll both the explicits and implicits, so you should avoid that remnant if possible. Now, once you've set up all the charges, you want to trigger them and then move on, clear out the rest of the map, and do either harvest or the map boss if you don't have a harvest. And you want to do that for 2 reasons. First of all, if there's still Eldritch monsters left, they might spawn an additional quantity or rarity altar, which will then increase your loot. In addition to that, it's of course more effective to wait for all the monsters to spawn, so you can kill them with AoE effects, specifically for minion builds, the explosion mechanic that you get from Crusader chests on your Animate Guardian. Now with Harvest in general, you want to choose the plant that spawns more high tier monsters with yellow essentially counting double in that way. And of course we're going to spawn mostly blue or purple plants because we're using a Lifeforce Duplication compass that forces at least one blue or purple plant. And we're doing that because the ones that force a yellow plant cost 3 times more currency, which in my opinion simply isn't worth it. And a good thing about Harvest is that we don't have to do much in order to sell off the Lifeforce. So what I usually do is just sell everything in bulk. So 10,000 blue or purple and 5,000 yellow Lifeforce for Divine. And then every now and then someone will approach you and ask for, I don't know, 10 to 50,000 Lifeforce. Especially blue or purple can take a couple days, right, to sell it off sometimes. But for the most part, the liquidity of the currency is pretty good. Now, one last thing, in case you don't know, you can choose an exact number of Lifeforce, or any other type of currency really, if you do a shift left click and then type in the exact number that you want in rapid succession. Now, especially for Lifeforce, this might take you a try or two, but since the scroll bar is, of course, completely useless for this type of currency, you should absolutely use that to not waste your or your buyer's time. And last but not least, there is Immortal Syndicate. Now, this won't be an in-depth guide to the mechanic, so if you don't know anything about it, I recommend you check out Zizaran's video on it. Of course, going to leave the link in the comments below. Instead, this will be a bit more streamlined because I don't want to waste most people's time. In general, we want 4 members in intervention, preferably Haku, Gravicius and Alrion, because their scarabs are worth the most, to the point where you should reroll any other winged scarabs with the Harvest Craft. In addition to that, we want Giannis in research for expedition reroll currency, and for sellable services we want Ashling and Warachi in research and Hillock in transportation or fortification. Once you've found and killed the mastermind, there are some specific drops from her that are valuable, including the flask as long as it's unidentified, the weapon with spell modifiers, and the helmet with the trigger or the element duration modifier. And while collecting the loot, you can start offering the services on TFT. In case you aren't already on it, I'm going to leave a link to the Discord server in the comments below, and you can get started by following the instructions on the server itself. One last thing in regards to the Immortal Syndicate, I heavily recommend a minimalist approach, so try to get the 4 intervention members and maybe 1 or 2 services to rank 3, and then run the mastermind. Maxing out all the members is going to effectively cost you currency, not make you more. For example, in this cycle, you would like Hillock and Giannis, and Alrion and Reen to switch places for maximum efficiency, but this would take a couple of maps because you're only going to get transportation or fortification encounters in 50% of the maps. The members also have a high rank, and the Immortal Syndicate becomes less dynamic as you progress in general. So instead, we just run it as is and utilize those maps to progress the next cycle. On rare occasions, you might find an altar that gives you divine orbs. Usually not at the start of the map though, I definitely got really lucky here. If you do find one, make sure to choose basic currency duplication on altars to increase the amount of divine orbs even more, taking precedent over any other altar that you might come across. They are, however, exceedingly rare, and I only found one in the 2 weeks I played the strategy. So in terms of overall currency, it's at best an additional benefit, and not the main focus of the strategy. As per usual, you can leave questions and suggestions in the comments below. I try to get to them as soon as possible, and I hope you find more divine altars than I did. See you in the next one.